Welcome to the Hedged Edge by RCM Ag Services, where we're getting out of the field and onto the mic to bring you weekly market updates, commentary from commodity experts, and monthly interviews with the biggest names in agribusiness. Happy New Year. We recently took a holiday hiatus, but we're back and bringing you some fascinating insight. While we took a break, the team has been ramping up our content and research efforts. So be sure to head over to RCM Ag Services website. That's rcmagservices.com to check out everything that we've been working on. And while you're there, we recently released some intel that dives into the latest inflation analysis. Make sure to hover over the blog tab and click on the post, then versus now, an overview of farm inflation from 1927 to present to download the latest white paper. Enough of that, let's get started with today's episode. I'm joined today with Dr. Channa Prakash. Dr. Prakash is the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at Tuskegee University in Tuskegee, Alabama, where he has served as faculty since 1989. He's a professor of crop genetics, biotechnology, and genomics, and well recognized for mentoring underrepresented minority students. Dr. Prakash's research expertise is on genetic improvement, research on food crops of importance to the developing countries throughout the world. He is the winner of multiple prestigious awards, including the 2015 Borlaug Cast Communication Award. As according to Cast, I have to read this, he has arguably done more than anyone else in academia or industry to promote agricultural technologies that can help feed the world's growing population. That's a big one. He has an active presence in social media, where he's considered a top agriculture biotechnology influencer, impacting close to 2 million readers per month on Twitter. At AgBioWorld is his Twitter handle, and globally ranked as #1 influencer of agriculture biotechnology issues. Dr. Prakash, that's quite a bio. Welcome, and thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. So Tuskegee, Alabama, I had to look it up to see exactly where it is. Looks like you're less than 30 miles from Auburn. Does that make you an Auburn fan, Tiger fan?
Oh, certainly, yes. You can't escape Auburn football when you are 100 miles radius of Auburn.
And you've been there since '89, so you know, you've seen the ups and the downs, I assume.
Certainly.
Very good, very good. And with the Twitter handle, I had to go and read your bio there as well, and I'll pull it up here for anyone who hasn't had a chance to go. But it says come for the science and stay for the animals. So you've got quite. You tend to post a lot, but also some clips on animals, dogs and cats.
Absolutely,
where does that come from?
I love animals, and so that kind of keeps me going. You know, mix science with some fun stuff now and then.
Yeah, you got to keep it light, right?
Absolutely.
Very good. Well, let's get into the discussion today. You know, obviously your background in genetics, genetic modification of seeds. It's unbelievable to see how much the agriculture industry has grown and evolved. You know, I got to think, you know, this last year was a year where the genetic modification of some of the seeds out there really came home to roost, right? We had flooding in the east, we had drought in the west, and then we had you know, kind of average somewhere in the middle, but yet we had close to the largest trendline yield of all time. Can you just share with us, how has science really played such a factor here?
Absolutely. You know, as you know, the average yield of corn in the United States used to be about 30 bushels per hectare for much of the time, up until the early 1930s, when we started seeing the hybrid corn varieties being released from Pioneer Hybrid, which did some really remarkable work on that, along with many other seed companies joining soon after. And today, you see average yields anywhere around 200 bushels per acre
Right.
in much of the heartland. And so, you need, if you think what makes this farmers, and sometimes in the same family now, growing 6 to 7 fold more corn per acre in the same land with everything else, the air, water, and everything being the same. What is that they're doing different? Is really much of that can be attributed to one word: science. It is the science that has provided our farmers with better varieties of croplands, using some of the most sophisticated technology on earth, comparable to the kind of technology that was used in the development of vaccines against COVID or developing diagnostics for COVID. We had some of the same profound technology being used in the development of corn and other croplands today, along with many other improvements in the satellite technology, the precision agriculture, the automation, and the improved management tools that the farmers have at their disposal now to control disease and pests and weeds. And so we need continuous innovation to keep doing what we're doing and even do better. As you just said, that the climate's been erratic, and the society places a lot of restrictions on how we grow our food today, and there's increasingly pressure on our farmers to use less chemicals, and there's a lot more regulation and a lot of issues, and so one of the most important tools that has come about lately is the advent of new genetic tools that is helping us develop better varieties of croplands so we can cope with many of the uncertainties that the farmers face today.
Right. Do you feel that it's the drought resistance feature, the pest resistance feature, the ability to kind of germinate faster? Which one is the most important in the process or the cycle, or they all equally kind of play their part?
I think they all play a role. It's overall, what we call is a climate resiliency. We need drought tolerance is probably the most important one, but along with it, many of that, it's also quite closely correlated with improved tolerance to salt, for instance, depending on where we grow crops. Many of the crops, when you look around the world, something like rice, for instance, is grown in areas that tend to get flooded. Rice is grown under flooding conditions, as you know, and repeated growing of rice in the same place tends to increase the salt concentration in the soil. And so the soils tend to be more alkaline. And so having salt resistant crops in those areas are going to help. And we also see increasing heat in places, including tropics. So having an element of heat tolerance is going to help. And so to breed this kind of climate resiliency with deep, long root system, and with many of the factors that help the plants to cope with these elements, including cold. And we know right now, how cold it is. And so having an early frost, for instance, can kill lots of fruits and vegetables, and having that frost tolerance built into our crops is also going to play an important role.
Out of curiosity, so we always think a lot about our largest cash crops: corn, soybeans, wheat. You mentioned fruits and vegetables just moments ago. Mm-hmm. Is there as much effort being put into those types of agricultural products as our main cash crops, or is it truly that this is a business and business interests drive innovation, and ultimately they're spending most of our time and energy on the big dogs?
Right. I think at the forefront is always going to be commodity crops that are there, and there's also with genetically modified crops, there was quite a huge burden of regulation. It's kind of like big drug companies were able to target many of the new molecules against high value diseases.
Right.
And that's how the ag is also going to move forward. So we're going to see some of the most immediate products that were released were on crops like soybean and corn, but we also saw many other crops, including the potato, for instance, papaya, and some of the other smaller crops joining into the technology bandwagon. But with the advent of newer tools such as genetic editing or gene editing, we are hoping that we already see there is a less amount of regulation, so it's less expensive to bring out a product into the commercial arena. And so we not only see many of the big players such as Bayer or Corteva, uh, Syngenta, and those companies, BASF, bringing out the products, but also many of the smaller companies and definitely the land grant universities. And as you know, land grant universities traditionally were at the forefront in the past 100 years in bringing many of the new varieties of crop plants, especially in fruits and vegetables. And I think they will now be able to do so with gene edited varieties.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So as we think about this, there's kind of two somewhat issues out there that we have to kind of think about moving forward. And well, one in particular is, we're going to have more people in the world, right? We currently 7.6 billion. We're writing a paper right now and did some analysis. There's some projections we're seeing that we may end up close to 10 billion people by the time we get to 2050. With that, we also have an increase. The largest increase is coming from developing nations. With that being said, the more developed they become, they're going to demand higher amounts of protein and more food. So, even though we might only be seeing a 25% increase in population, some things I've read show we might need to produce upwards of 60 to 70% more actual, agricultural products, protein. So I guess, how are we going to do this? This is the big question. How are we going to do this? Is it all genetics? Is there's some other factors, or I guess let's just stick with genetics. What more can be done to get to 250 bushel corn more?
Yeah, absolutely. We need all the tools in our toolbox, and genetics we know is helping. When you look at the curve going from 30 bushels to 200 and 250 or even 300 bushels, it's going to take us with genetics, but also we're getting help from a lot of other technological developments, the Internet of Things, the smart sensors that are built into our equipment, our ability to fine-tune the applications of chemical inputs onto the farm, driven by precision agriculture. Artificial intelligence and machine learning play a lot of role in that. And so we are seeing massive innovation going on, so many different areas into the farming. And I think all of that and converging into the farm would help us to produce more, but not just more, but also better quality of produce in a way that is far more sustainable than what we have been doing so far, producing croplands with a much gentler footprint on the natural resources that it takes to produce food today, the air, the water, and the soil.
That's a great point, and it actually leads to my next question is you need to be gentle with the land to also make sure you kind of appease the naysayers to genetics. So this is kind of the balance, right? You have some people that are opposing the genetic modification of seeds, and what can we say to help kind of drive home the point of the importance of genetic modifications, but also the safety and then their impact on the land? Because at the end of the day, we only have one planet, right?
Absolutely, and I think farmers understand it very well, but unfortunately, a lot of our population is so far removed from the land, and they really do not realize that every crop plant that we grow today has been genetically modified from its wild relatives when we started domesticating those crop plants 6, 8, or 10,000 years ago. And since then, the corn crop that I see in the background of you does not look anywhere close to teosinte, the ancestral progenitor of that crop from which it was derived in Mexico about 10,000 years ago. And you see that every crop plant has been bread conventionally has been selected to be different. It's just that in the past 30 years, we've been using more fine, more precise tools to make some of the same changes. So today, the genetically modified food and the varieties that we are on the market today are as safe or even safer than many of the traditional counterparts. It's simply because the changes what we do are very minute, very small, and then it comes with a lot of knowledge base because we know the changes that we are making compared to traditional breeding where we really didn't know all the changes that were happening. When you cross a tomato with a wild species of tomato, you brought in a lot of undesirable factors into the cultivated tomato, and we had no idea what they were. So we were really literally, walking in the dark earlier, but today there is a lot more light. And so with that greater precision into our breeding and with the greater knowledge that we have the confidence that this food is safe and even safer. But also look at all the benefits that the newer technology can bring to you as a consumer.
Right.
You are going to have nutritionally far better, far superior product with high protein, better vitamins, better keeping quality, and less toxins. Less undesirable factors like allergens and toxins in your food, and also the stability of food production, despite the vagaries of environment, we'll still have an assured food production that would feed not just the rich and the haves, but also all of the world, all of those 9-10 billion people that you're talking about. And technology can be and will be an important factor in ensuring that.
No, I appreciate that perspective, and I think that you're absolutely correct. There's really no other path forward. If we rely on the organic nature alone, one, food costs would be through the roof and unsustainable for the globe, and two, the reality is that it's safe, and that's a really important message that we want to be sure to get across, that it is safe.
It's very safe, both from your health point of view and also from an environmental point of view. In fact, we have seen far more benefits from genetically modified crops to the environment in terms of reducing the use of pesticides,
Right.
and reducing the use of harm or relatively more toxic herbicides, and how zero tillage farming, conventional, compared to conventional tillage, the zero tillage can help the biodiversity on the farm and in so many ways.
I think that's a really great point. It's not just modifying the seeds; it's the improvement in technology. It's the improvement of the care of the land, etc. And suddenly, we actually have a cleaner planet as a function of the work that's being done. So that's a great point, and I think we need to make sure to retweet that a few times over.
Absolutely.
Moving on here a bit, I want to talk, because this is a big part of your area of interest, I believe, is the food security, but also feeding the underdeveloped countries or the developing nations. So earlier today on Twitter, you posted a post that said that 75% of the world's patents in agriculture gene editing are coming out of China. Yeah. I hear this and I think, damn, we're screwed. We really are. At least our food security is. I mean, if they're working so hard to secure the editing of these genes, obviously it's for a reason. They've got so many people. But
right.
How do countries like China and India and areas in Africa, how are they I guess moving forward with trying to feed their populations, other than buying the best products in the world, American made corn, soybeans?
Exactly. As you know, China is one of the largest importers of soybean, more than any other country, and it billions and billions of dollars worth of soybean they import. But at the same time, China is also a country that's economically moving. It's getting so bigger, and they can afford and not only import, but also they are, in many ways, they have very, very strong strategic planning for the future. And that's why they are placing all their bets on some of the genomics technologies, including gene editing. As you just mentioned, 75% of the patents are coming out of China, and China spent something like $100 billion in research and development
Wow.
on genomics of croplands and in healthcare in many areas. And while in the Western countries here, we have a lot of debates about the usefulness of that and to see if we need to move forward. China is not debating about many of this. They're just simply moving forward because China has a limited arable land compared
Right.
to even to India. They have a smaller arable land because much of China is non-arable. It's in the western part, you cannot really grow anything. And secondly, they have a huge population, 1.7 billion people, and so they are doing a lot of things in planning for the food security for the future. And one of that is to investing in the genomics technologies as applied to agriculture. That also tells us that many of us in the developing world, I come from India, and India is not spending enough resources into science and technology when it comes to agriculture. And it is also influenced by a lot of political factions that are bringing pseudoscience into the debate. And there's one very loud faction within India asking India to go back into the romantic days of 18th century farming,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine if you have a 1/10 of the population of what we have today. But in the current scenario, with all the constraints that we have, and then to make sure that we do not cut down a single more acre of the wild lands and the wetlands and bring them into the farming. You see, one of the important things that's happened in the past 40 years in our ability to feed the world happened because of Green Revolution and increasing in the power of the genetics, but also we brought a lot of, especially in the tropics, we cut down a lot of forests and brought them under farming. And we cannot afford to do that anymore because so much of valuable biodiversity would be gone if we cut down those valuable forests, right? And so the only option that we have is to see how much more food we can grow with the current land under agriculture, and how we can do it in a manner without screwing up all the natural resources that we depend in farming so badly.
That's a great point. Is that absolutely? You can't cut down the forest just to grow agriculture. that doesn't
Right, and that's
help
what we
our
have done.
cause. Right.
That's what we have done historically all these years. That we just won't be able to do that anymore. We don't have that option any longer.
So how much does then technology play into those developing countries? I mean, I think I saw a study, I believe it was from Dr. Scott Irwin and Farm Doc at University of Illinois, where they showed the trend line yield in corn, I believe in China is maybe 80 or 90 bushels or something along those lines, versus 180, or as you said, some parts 200 here in the US. Can the technology that we have today in the US be applied in those countries, not just China, but like Africa and others? Or is their land so different, vastly different, that we actually need new technology to service those types of areas?
Right. I think in every way, because of the changing ecological and geographic factors, we need to tailor down varietal development or application of other technologies depending on the local factors. For instance, mechanization. When you have large thousands of acres of land like we have in the United States today, we may be able to bring massive mechanization that may not be readily possible in places like Africa or India, where land holdings tends to be smaller. But on the other hand, they have come around that. Many, for instance, in India, they have formed a cooperatives. The farmers in Punjab, for instance, they may only have 5 or 10 acres of wheat, but collectively 100 farmers get together, and then you have 500 acres of land, and then you'd be able to use the combine harvesters like we do here. And so they are adapting the technology to their local needs in their own way, but the development of varieties clearly need to be tailored, and that's what the seed companies and the universities across the world are doing. The corn that can grow here in the United States will not readily be grown in Uganda or Nigeria, but the similar concept of the technology may be used with the local germplasm to bring about some of the similar changes. But what I think is going to help countries, whether it's in Africa, Latin America, or Asia, move forward is their investment in technology and investment in innovation, combined with sound policies, sound government policies that facilitate integration of this innovation into their farming, but also many other issues like market access is also going to be important. And
sure, in
how
Africa, they don't, the Central African country really has no access to the ocean for transport.
Absolutely.
So you're just talking about needing to build up rail lines and trucking infrastructure and or river efforts, but there's not a lot of water there as well. So
yeah, certainly, and that's the same true in many countries, even in China, for instance. It's cheaper for them to import soybeans from the United States than grow there, because it is more expensive for them to transport soybean from where it is grown in the hinterlands over there. And all of those infrastructural developments are going to be important. And in Africa, one of the main constraints is the lack of roads, simply, and farmers having a lack of access to market because of poor roads has been an important factor.
well, sure. John Deere says, hey, I want to go put my massive combines on the African roads, and there's no road that can sustain a tractor of that size, right? It would beat it up. It wouldn't, you might have more mechanical issues and failures because it's not as, even of an area. There's all sorts of factors that go into why you wouldn't just copy paste the American policies and, efforts straight into these other countries. So it sounds to me like we're 30, 50, 100 years off from being able to catch up in those places. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, yes, in some places, yes, but in some places they're already very advanced and in their own manner. And so there is a lot of heterogeneity. Even within a country like India, for instance, you can go to Punjab, you find some of their agricultural output comparable to what you find in Iowa and Illinois. But again, in some other places like Bihar, you may not see so. And that's due to a variety of factors. It's ecological, geographic, political governance, all of them play a role. But we do recognize that for overall, if a country is very dependent on farming, where much of its people are employed in the rural areas and farming, then the prosperity of the country hinges on our ability to improve the farm productivity, one way or other.
Yeah, never underestimate human ingenuity, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, we saw a movie about they can grow potatoes on the Mars, right?
Right.
So, and there it is. You can see, you'll be surprised how, for instance, Saudi Arabia is now, by using technology so wisely, is able to grow wheat and so many other fruit and vegetables along with grains in the desert over there by using, look at Israel. I think that's the most, it's a small country with absolutely nobody would have 100 years ago would have expected it to be an agricultural superpower, and that's what it is. Israel is exporting fruits and vegetables to Europe.
What country was that? Was Saudi Arabia, you said?
Saudi Arabia is very far ahead, but Israel,
Israel,
technologically, I think is one of the most, it epitomizes how a country with scarce resources, with poor quality agricultural land, and yet can grow all kinds of crops over there in greenhouses and with drip irrigation and with just such clever use of technology.
Right, and then access to the Mediterranean plus any sort of rail as well. That's it's a prime location. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, certainly.
The last question here. This is a big one. It's kind of a big idea. So I guess what do you see as the greatest risk factor to feeding the planet for the next 30 to 50 years? Is it,
I think the biggest risk is the reluctance or the skepticism of the elites when it comes to agriculture, trying to impose all kinds of restrictions on our ability to grow food. If you look at Europe, they're really going backwards in many ways with their new policies called farm to fork policies, where they're asking, literally banning the use of many agri-chemicals, for instance, which is not necessarily science-based. A lot of them is driven by emotions and ideology. So I personally believe as you mentioned, we have a tremendous potential and our human ingenuity to bring about a lot of solutions that is facing the agriculture today. But our hands are tied in many ways by the government policies and the reluctance of people to encourage or accept many of these new technologies. I think if we have, so that's where we clearly need an open dialogue and the sharing of knowledge and education. And if we bring in an enlightened society, which is much more progressive and facilitating of these new innovations, I'm quite confident that we would be able to not only feed the world that is expanding, but do so in a much more responsible manner and environmentally sustainable manner.
I love to hear that. My kids love to hear it too. They said that their number one goal is to reduce greenhouse emissions, and
Yes.
so you have two daughters, so they're going to be happy to hear that you're a big part of that. So I commend you. So thank you.
Certainly, you're welcome.
So last more off-topic question, more for fun. So if you could be any professional athlete, what sport would you choose to play?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. See, I grew up in India where a lot of us were really obsessed with cricket. And I know you have an American audience and they have no idea what cricket is. It's kind of they take the baseball and let that play for 5 days and then you have cricket, you see. And so I used to be a big fan of cricket, and I would think if I had a chance, I would play cricket. Unfortunately, most Americans would have no idea what I'm talking about.
Oh, it's an amazing sport. I don't know all the rules, but when I see it, the scores are a lot of scoring. I think, 150, 200 points in a game. I don't understand though the 5 days. So you
that used to be the case, that the test matches are played for 5 days. Okay. But now, like most things, cricket they've adapted a lot of ideas from baseball. They even have cheerleaders. And so they have limited 3-hour games now. And it's a lot of fun to watch. And believe it or not, there is an American cricket team that plays in these international leagues. It's not very highly rated, but we do have a US team in cricket.
Well, that's great. Well, it sounds like you need to get a cricket team at Tuskegee University. If you haven't already done that, as the dean, you should implement that.
Yeah, certainly. Because it's not just Indians and Pakistanis, Bangladesh, but a lot of our students from Caribbean,
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, we call them West Indies, and they are a cricket powerhouse.
If we get together and meet and there's a cricket game nearby, I'd love to learn and play. I think that would be a lot of fun. So
absolutely, why not?
Perfect. Well, Dr. Prakash, thanks for your time today. Where can we find you? What's the best place to follow you? I know you have a big social media influence, so you're on Twitter. Anywhere else?
Yes.
Go ahead and
Twitter and Facebook. Right, Twitter and Facebook, and both I go with my handle Ag Bio World. It was a website and a newsletter that I used to run for many years. And so I kind of use the same handle when I move on to the social media. So I encourage all of your listeners to please follow me and to help keep up with what's going on in the world of farming innovation.
Yeah, we will. We're going to include you in all the notes and our blog posts and Twitter handles as well. People can always find us at RCM_ag and our website, rcmagservices.com. And again, this is the Hedged Edge with Dr. Prakash. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I enjoyed talking to you.
Perfect. Thanks again.
You've been listening to The Hedged Edge. Links from this episode will be in the episode description of this channel. Follow us on Twitter at ag_RCM, like our Facebook page under RCM Ag Services, and visit our website to read our blog and subscribe to our newsletter at rcmagservices.com. If you like our show, introduce a friend and show them how to subscribe. And be sure to leave comments. We'd love to hear them. This podcast is provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as legal, business, investment, or tax advice. All opinions expressed by podcast participants are solely their own opinions and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of RCM Alternatives, their affiliates, or companies featured. Due to industry regulations, participants on this podcast are instructed not to make specific trade recommendations nor reference past or potential profits, and listeners are reminded that managed futures, commodity trading, and other alternative investments are complex and carry a risk of substantial losses. As such, they are not suitable for all investors.